Hello everyone, this is Mark Maritato, military historical artist. Thank you for joining me once again for another video. Today I am beginning work on a brand new painting. This painting will depict the 1st Minnesota Infantry Regiment of the Union 2nd Corps as they make their famous charge to stop the Alabama Brigade of Cadmus Wilcox from penetrating the Union line. This took place on the evening of the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg and was a storied and very well-known action that took place, having major ramifications for the outcome of the battle in general. Folks, before we go any further, if you wouldn't mind please leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the notification bell so that you get notified of new videos that come out. It would really help us out. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers to try to grow this channel. Also, if you wouldn't mind please visiting our social media sites. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. We would really appreciate your stopping by and checking out what we do. Thank you. I'm going to leave some links in the description of this video to give you more information on the history of the 1st Minnesota Regiment, but the basic gist of what's going on in this painting is on the second day of the battle, the 1st Minnesota Regiment, which numbered about 262 men, were in a reserve position on the main Union battle line along the Emmitsburg Road. Now, if you understand what happened during the battle, the Confederate Army launched a massive assault along this line and started to collapse the main Union defenses along this particular part of the battlefield, which threatened to open up a big, wide gap in the Union defenses. So the commander of the 2nd Corps, who was also in command of this general portion of the battlefield, a general named Winfield Scott Hancock, was struggling to pull together reinforcements to stop the onslaught of the Confederates from piercing his portion of the main Union defenses. He rode up to the 1st Minnesota and basically ordered them to charge into a brigade of Alabamians commanded by Cadmus Wilcox and stop them cold from penetrating the line so that Hancock could find more reinforcements to fill in the gaps that were opening up in his line. The 1st Minnesota Regiment did not falter or waver in their duties. They leveled their bayonets and charged headlong into the Alabamians. Within about 5 minutes, they lost about 215 men out of the 262 present for duty that day, suffering casualties of about 47 killed, 121 wounded, and 47 missing, which also included the colonel of the regiment, William Colville. A devastating toll which gave the 1st Minnesota Regiment the distinction of having one of the highest percentage of casualty losses of any other regiment during the battle. So with this being a 40-inch by 30-inch oil on canvas painting, how I started this was to first start with a sketch drawing that I worked on almost completely in Adobe Photoshop. I hand drew everything and got it to where I liked it. And then once I was satisfied with the drawing, I then transferred the drawing onto the canvas after toning it, this undertone of the brown color that you see here, which is a wash, which is a mix of gesso and burnt umber acrylic paint, which is mixed together to make a neutral brown tone to lay the underdrawing over onto the canvas as you see it here. Once I transferred the drawing of the soldiers over to the canvas, and then after applying a light wash of acrylic and ink, I then covered the entire canvas with clear acrylic gesso to seal in the drawing and seal in the acrylic paint so that if I ever had to wipe any of the oil paint off, I could still see the drawing underneath it. Here is a video clip of what the canvas looked like with the initial drawing and underpainting sketch drawn in acrylic paints after applying the medium neutral tone with the gesso and burnt umber brown paint. This was before I applied the clear acrylic gesso overlay as the final layer, before I began working on the painting with oil paints. So with a battle scene that is large and complex and busy and full of figures as this one will be, my most important goal from the outset is to get down an overall feeling of the scene first. So I'm not so concerned with getting down any details. I'm just trying to block in the initial colors to try to get the overall feeling down of the scene as quickly as I possibly can, so that I can judge my colors and my values going forward, if that makes sense. Normally what I will do is start working on the element that is furthest back from the viewer, which would in most cases be the sky. That would be what I would normally start with first and then work my way forward. So as I'm working on this painting, I am working on background elements first and then coming forward. With every pass, I always start with the background first and then come forward, so that the foreground figures and elements are really the last thing that I will work on towards the end of the painting process, which is a process that helps me to build the layers of paint in order to build a realistic looking scene. I'm starting with some fairly large brushes because I'm not very concerned right now with getting detail. The only thing I'm concerned with right now is to block in colors where I feel like they need to be. Also to establish an overall value for each color in the overall scheme of the painting. So each color is going to essentially play its own role to help tell the story of the scene. So if you'll notice, nothing is really being defined here just yet. The only thing I'm concerned with right now is just to get the colors down. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be the right colors. It just has to be color to inform the values of the overall scene. So the lightnesses and the darknesses and the midtones, that's what I mean by value, meaning what the overall scene is going to be lit like is what I'm trying to establish here. The overall feeling of the lighting, the overall feeling of the color, that's what I'm trying to establish first. And then later on I can go in and start actually plugging in more refined details as the painting progresses. So you're just seeing me right now just putting in whatever colors I can in certain areas just to kind of make it kind of an overall feeling first of a scene. And then later and later as I move on, you'll see that I will refine it, and add more details as I go along. Alright folks, so I'm going to let the video play out. If you want to watch other videos of this painting being created, I'm going to be adding them to a playlist on this channel called The 1st Minnesota at Gettysburg Oil Painting. You can just look there and I will be adding future parts of the creation of this painting to that playlist. Also, if you have any questions about anything having to do with the painting, about the history of the 1st Minnesota, or about the technique that I use, or basically just anything, feel free to leave it in the comments section and I'll be glad to answer as soon as I possibly can. I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. Alright folks, we've come to the end of part 1 of this video series. As I said, future videos will be uploaded to a playlist. Thank you for watching the video. If you're interested in artwork or limited edition prints, please visit my website at maritato.com.